It's not surprising that our medieval scholars believe this type of stuff. Now, obviously, dare I say, anybody who knows science and geography and modern civilization, you cannot believe that there is a tribe for 4,000 years trapped behind a wall. I mean, if you believe this, that's your position. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. I find this very difficult to believe. They're in some place separated from mankind. So if somebody were to say, how can we believe these ahadith when Google Earth has mapped the whole world? We can zoom in and see everything around us, and there is no massive land hidden from mankind. The response is, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allahu a'lam. If we believe in the ahadith, this is what the ahadith tell us. This is what the ahadith tell us. And there's a simple rule that Ibn Taymiyyah mentions. Memorize this rule. The Quran and Sunnah does not bring the impossible, but it does bring that which astounds the mind. Is it impossible that somewhere underground Allah has thousands of people living? It's not impossible. It's not impossible.
Excellent. So this is actually a beautiful point. Beautiful point. And I guess the brother who did this, طبعا, may Allah forgive and guide him and bless him, he didn't quote the full lecture that I gave about Yajooj and Majooj, because I said very clearly in that lecture. See, actually, both of my clips that I'm looking at, they're both valid from the paradigm, 100%. I'll explain to you why. The second clip, which is the earlier one, the second clip is based in Memphis, which I'm assuming 5-6 years ago, looking at the ambience there, and the fact that there's no whitish or a few white hairs in my beard. When I want to see how old I am, I look at the whiteness in my beard's hairs of my beard. At that stage, I had read a number of books about the signs of the Day of Judgment, and some of them were master's PhD dissertations. One of them is actually a very good book, Ashrat al-Sa'ba al-Wabili. I have it up there somewhere, and it's actually a master's dissertation from al-Qura University, and it's one of the main books that I utilize for the signs of the Day of Judgment. And that he did a very good job of basically referencing the hadith and linking them to basically primarily Shaykh al-Albani. Shaykh al-Albani says hadith is weak, is authentic or weak, then he's going to quote it. Now, at that stage, I relied on Shaykh al-Albani's categorization of hadith, and this book and other books said that Shaykh al-Albani mentioned that the hadith about Yajooj and Majooj is authentic, that they are currently in existence. Okay, if the hadith is authentic, sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey. Now, when I did the other series of the Day of Judgment, the Signs of Day of Judgment, I really went back to the sources. So every student of knowledge knows there's different levels of going back to the sources. You can go back to primary books written, okay, right? And that's what I did for my previous lectures. For this lecture, you go back to the original ahadith. You go back to the actual data points. What does the hadith itself say? And what is the authenticity of the hadith beyond just one scholar? When I did the first lecture, I blindly followed basically one school. And Shaykh al-Albani said, okay, he said the hadith is good. Okay, when I did the second lecture, I actually really did a deep dive in this issue of Yajooj and Majooj, because you can even tell, even in the Memphis lecture, by the way, I am troubled, like, okay, how do we understand this? How do we do it? And I say, well, okay, Allah is capable of all things. And that's true, I do believe that. But here's the point, and again, this is a very good point. From my view, there's no contradiction at all between the first and the second video in terms of paradigms, in terms of usul, what you call it. Why? Because the first video, which is the one in Dallas, for the first time I went back to what multiple ulama said about the hadith of Yajooj and Majooj that is still alive. So again, to clarify, the concept of Yajooj and Majooj is in the Quran. Nobody can deny that. The fact that they were blocked up, it's in the Quran. The fact that they're going to come towards the end of times, it's in the Quran, and it's in mutawatir ahadith. Okay, there is only one hadith, which is in Tirmidhi and others, but it's one isnad. One hadith, only one, that mentions that they are currently alive right now, and that they keep on trying to dig behind the wall, dig from the wall, and to, and to get out, and to, they don't say inshallah and whatnot, or the guard doesn't say inshallah. So there's one hadith like that only. And as I said, the previous lecture, I consider this hadith to be authentic. Okay, now when I went back, I discovered, hey, hold on a second, this hadith has been problematized by multiple ulama. And there's in fact an entire pamphlet or treatise written by one of the students of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, who's a scholar of hadith as well. And he's written an entire treatise explaining why this hadith is weak from an isnad perspective. right? And I read through this one, and I went back, I saw what Ibn Kathir said. Ibn Kathir problematized this hadith, other people problematized this hadith, right? And I concluded, you know what, they're right. Actually, this hadith does have a defect in it that makes it weak. This is the position of a number of earlier authorities. Now, you've eliminated the one hadith that mentions that Yajooj and Majooj are still around. Therefore, your data points have changed. You see, when you present a hypothesis, you take in all the data points, and then you bring forth a hypothesis. In this particular case, the data point that mentions Yajooj and Majooj are still around, that has been removed. Now that it's been removed, okay, then we have a whole different parameter. And so here's the point, and again, to be very clear here. If Allah or His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that we have to accept X or Y or Z, sami'na wa ata'na, we have to accept. But what if that's not there? In this case, well then, we don't have to accept it. So the fact that there is no authentic hadith that mentions Yajooj and Majooj are still around, so then we don't have to accept it anymore. And if somebody says, hey, the hadith is not authentic in the first place, then they derive interpretations, and the interpretation I derived is, I think, the one that makes the most sense, is that these were tribes that were trapped in the past, and towards the end of time, civilizations are going to resort to that type of mentality. Maybe even they are the biological descendants of those tribes, and they are going to attack the Muslim Ummah and attack the world in a very barbaric manner, and so they are called Yajooj and Majooj as well. So, and this is the position of Anwar Shah Kashmiri, is the position of Sheikh As-Sa'di, it is the position of one of my own teachers in Medina as well. So here's the point, paradigm wise they're both the same, in the sense, if the hadith is authentic, we accept it.